Alright guys, welcome to the second travel Q&A video, how to plan your backpacking adventure. Thanks for sending in all your questions and all your comments for last week. Last week I just got back from a trip and I'm a bit more rested now, so hopefully I don't look quite as tired, because last time a few people commented going, "Oh hey Karl, I love your videos, but you look like shit." So cheers for that. But anyway, planning your trip. Now, the first question that's really come in by a few people, such as Ben, Victor, Fabian, Ian, is the whole planning versus spontaneous. So there is an argument for just booking a ticket, showing up somewhere and seeing what happens. And that's great, that can work. If you've got a lot of time and money to play with as well, that can work out well. Now the arguments for planning a trip is that it can really help you make the most of your time whilst you're away. So you're not spending any time researching things whilst you're on the road, you're just enjoying your adventure. And it can really help you budget for a trip, so you know how much you need to save up. And also it can help you not miss out on some of the best things because you didn't find out about it beforehand. Now, where I sort of sit on the spectrum from spontaneous to planning is, I like to come up for a plan for my trip, but then as soon as you land, you can throw that plan out the window. You don't have to go with it. I just use it as a guide. Like, I've got a plan. This is a version of the trip I could do that covers the things I want to do, but if I get there and see something different or whatever, I can go off in that direction or that. It's just a guide, that's it. So you don't have to stick to it. Then the budgeteers have asked, how do you plan for the unpredictable? Like, how do you make time for spontaneity on your trips? So the way I did that, like with the Backpackers of the Caribbean trip, was we had 4 things we wanted to do: the Sandblast, the Lost City Trail, Angel Falls and Roraima Mountain. And we could have squeezed those 4 things into 3 or 4 weeks, but we gave ourselves 7 weeks so that in between that we could just go with the flow and do whatever we wanted to do. I mean, we ended up mostly just getting drunk by the pool, but still, we could have done other stuff. So how do you actually begin to plan a trip? Well, I'll get onto doing it all by yourself in a second, but if you haven't got a clue where to start, you can always just go into a travel agency. You don't have to book something straight away, you can just go in and chat to them. And since I've freelanced with them, I feel obliged to mention STA Travel, but I've worked with STA Travel for about a year, but I've been a customer of theirs for years. We've booked all of HK2NY with them, and that's what their job is, that's what they're there for. They're travel experts to give you advice. So go and have a chat and they can sort of get you started on where you might want to go, what things you want to do, what you got to save up for, and then maybe come back a few months later and actually book it once you've got the money together. For the sake of balance, there are other travel agencies available, they're just not as good. Now, so how do you actually plan a trip by yourself? I've got Tyler, April and Ricky all asking about planning a trip in Southeast Asia and other places. Like, how do you figure out your route, where to go? Well, here's what I do. I go to the tour company websites like G Adventures, Contiki, Stray, Q Experience, whoever. You go to their websites and steal their itineraries. That's what I do, because these guys have made a living out of taking people around these places to the best places. They've already got the best routes figured out, so you just go on their website and steal their ideas. That's what I do. So if I'm on the G Adventures website, I want to go to Southeast Asia, I can search Indochina and bang, all these routes come up. Now you might go on the website, see a tour and go, that looks perfect, and just book that, and that's your job done. Going on a tour versus not going on a tour is like a whole separate discussion really, because it all just depends on where you're going, how long for, what do you want to get out of the trip, who you're traveling with, things like that. Sometimes I use tours, sometimes I don't. I mean, I've traveled with G Adventures a few times, I've traveled with Contiki, Q Experience, and they've all been absolutely brilliant. So it just depends what you're after. But for now, let's say you're not going to book the tour. Have a look at their itinerary. So here we've got their Indochina Discovery, and you'll see the route around Southeast Asia going to all the main places. So from there you can start actually coming up with an itinerary of what you want to do. Now keep in mind, these tours usually go at a very fast pace, just bang bang bang, one place after another doing the main things. So if you can, just take what schedule they have and just double it or more, you know. I mean, there are some places you'll go to and you only need a couple of days, that's all there is to do there, but other places you might get there and really enjoy the vibe and end up spending a week or two. So it just varies. So you'll be on the website and you might be looking at this map and this route, but you don't know what these places are and what there is to do there. So Chiang Mai, what's there to do there? Well, go onto Wiki Travel, put in Chiang Mai, and it comes up with everything you need to know. Like, tells you about the place, the climate, what time of year to go, best way to get there. There's a list of things to see and there's a list of things to do. And you might scroll down, you'll see Flight of the Gibbon, and you might think, isn't that the zipline thing that James and Karl did on HK2NY in Thailand? Yes, it is. So Google Flight of Gibbon, go to their website, and then you'll see how much it costs, 3,999 baht. Okay, how much is that? Go on to XC.com, oh right, it's £87. Stick that in your budget. And that's how you can start building up a budget, is just figuring out the places you want to go to and what there is to do there, because the thing that can really screw up your budget is all these expensive activities. So by doing a bit of research of them, you can figure out how much you need to save up, and so when you get to these places, you can actually do the things that you want to do. So that's one way to get started. Another thing you can do, I mean, I've got this question here from Art John. I think that's how you pronounce your name, mate. I'm sorry if it's wrong, but he's saying, oh, have I done any planning for where I'm going to go in Philippines next year? And one of the things you can do is Google travel blogs on these places. If I put in Google like top 10 things to do in Philippines, or 2-week itinerary in Philippines, all these blogs will come up, and you can get ideas from there as well, and scroll down and go, oh cool, those rice fields look cool, where's that? Alright, stick that in Wiki Travel and go from there. I often get asked like, how much time do you need in each place? Like Callum's asking, oh, how much time to spend in Southeast Asia? He's planning on 9 months, is that too much? And it just depends what you want to do, really. I mean, I always say if you go on a longer trip, there's two kinds of trips you can do. You can either just stick to one area and really get to know it, or you can go visit a lot of areas, moving around a lot, and just try and soak in as much as possible. So 2006, when I first went backpacking, I spent most of the time in New Zealand, and I worked there and traveled around and really got to know the country. And then when we did HK to NY, we did loads of places and moved quite fast, but yeah, like I said, just try and soak up as much as possible. So for 9 months in Southeast Asia, you could travel around everywhere. You can like get off the beaten track, see so many different sites and places, but also just really take your time, relax, and really get stuck in with the continent. So yeah. Now, getting around, you've got this list of places, but how do you get from A to B? I mean, I've got Karl asking about this big trip around Europe and how's he going to get around. Well, a great website to use is called Rome to Rio. You can literally just put in one place and another, and it'll give you a list of all the different ways you can travel from one to the other, whether it's by car, train, bus, plane, whatever, and it'll give you a list of times and a sort of rough estimate of costs. So that's a really useful website for sort of figuring out how much time you need for traveling from A to B, and also how much it's going to cost. So again, this helps you out with your budgeting for your trip. Then also Sandra is asking me about advice for train tickets in Italy, and I don't know the answer to your question, Sandra, but if I was going to find it out, the website I would use is called The Man in Seat 61, so it's seat61.com. And this has information about traveling by train in every country in the world. It's so useful, this website. There's so much information. I use this for my India trip in January. Like for the north part of my India trip, I pre-booked all my trains through an English company to save me the hassle on the trip. And I wouldn't have found out about this little company if it wasn't for Seat 61, and it made my trip so much easier in the north of India. So that website's just a goldmine. Just definitely check it out. Now flights, Dexter and Stefan are asking like, when do I book my flights, how far in advance? And the answer is I try and book them as soon as possible, because the closer you get to your leaving date, the more the prices go up. So as soon as I know I'm definitely going away, I'll book the flights. Now I'll look on Skyscanner to get a rough idea of the prices and try and find the cheapest ones, but if I'm doing a big flight to the other side of the world, or around the world ticket or whatever, I'm not going to use one of their cheap travel companies they recommend, because sometimes their customer service is just terrible. So I'd rather go with a company I know and trust for a big ticket that I'm spending a lot of money on. So I'll either go to Expedia or into STA Travel again to book it. And then round the world tickets, Liam's asking, were we happy with our round the world ticket, or would we have preferred more freedom of not being tied to an itinerary? And well, actually we did have freedom, because we booked it with STA Travel, and they have a multi-flex ticket where you can change the dates of your flights without being charged, so we weren't stuck to anything really. So now you've got your route planned, you've got an idea of how you're going to get from one place to another, and you've got your flights sorted, but what about accommodation? Now, Sissy asks, like, where do I stay? What kind of accommodation do I always stay in? And the answer is hostels. I always say the best thing about traveling is meeting new people, and hostels are the best place to do that. Plus, most hostels have a travel desk, so you can book your day activities through them. They might organise things in the evening. You can book your onward travel. So if you get yourself in a good hostel, it can sort you right out. Now, Mark and Chris Boy 120 have asked about booking accommodation in advance. Like, do I book all my hostels before I leave, or do I just book the one at the start? And the answer is I book the one at the start, and that's it. Like I said earlier, your plan is just a guide. You don't want to be stuck to that and have everything booked before you go. So just book your first hostel and go from there. Now, I have done another video on finding the best hostels, booking them and budgeting for them, so check that out for some more tips as well. And finally, budgeting. I mean, Andy asks, budget, where do you start? And I've touched on it a little bit already, but my basic rule of thumb is try and have $1,000 or $1,500 spending money per month. That's a good yardstick to use. I mean, that'll get you by fine in like Asia and South America. Westernized countries are a bit more expensive, so you might need a bit more. But the process I've gone through of planning out your route and how to get from one place to another and things like that, you can actually come up with a very detailed budget. But if you can't be bothered with that, just find out how much your flights are, figure out which activities you want to do, because that can really eat up your budget, and then just think, yeah, roughly $1,000 a month. That should get you by all right. And that's about it. So hopefully I've given you enough information there to get you started on planning your own adventure. Next week the video is going to be all about packing for your trip, so send through all your questions about packing, like what size backpack to take, what essentials to bring, what happens to your bags during a day at hostels. Send all those in, and I'll try and cover all of those next week in the video. But for now, I've got to get on with editing India.